Hi, everybody. It's 5:31, so we're gonna start on time. Our guest isn't here yet, but they're probably in traffic. I know that they're coming, so I'm not worried. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to start with some Jeopardy, but only two of my bells are working. It's a hazard. It happens at this time in the semester. One's broken. So I just need two Jeopardy players to come on down. Only two, okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Yeah, thanks, good luck. May the best. You have to look at the cameras or something, you know. Yeah. And I also want to welcome, we have two alumni. They actually come back to class. They thought there wasn't enough class, so they came back. We have Andrew Burnett. He's here, and we also have Margot. She has a last name I can't pronounce. Yeah, Zenkotita. She's here too. So they're coming back as alumni just to learn more. So great. So what was last week's class about? Yep. And who was first? Okay, zoning. That's right. And what's this week's class about? Property tax. Yep. Let's see what else. Yeah, the homestead's part of it. Come on in. We have our guests coming in. So I'm going to continue with Jeopardy, but we have our guests here. So, hi, Lazaro. How are you? Good to see you. Hi. Nice to meet you. So I'm just starting them off with some Jeopardy, but I can start you guys off with a Cuban coffee. Would you want some? I just had some. But so, let's see. So more Jeopardy questions. Well, this isn't a Jeopardy question. This is just a question for the whole room. How many people voted? Yeah. So you saw, and just before class I sent out something about the amendments that were on the Florida ballot. Did you guys read those amendments when you voted? Yeah. Did you know we were going to have property tax class like the next day after the election? Yeah. So we're going to talk about what those amendments mean. For the context of real estate law. When is the developer luncheon? 18th, yeah, Friday the 18th. And how many people have RSVP'd for the developer luncheon? If you guys want to go, you have to RSVP. I'm leading the luncheon. It's a fancy luncheon. It's like a salad and an entree and dessert. The developer is Integra, and they're developing a project called Aventura Square. It's 7 acres, and it's in downtown Aventura. We expect about 150 or 200 people at the lunch. A lot of our alumni come back, and it's a great place to network. But this isn't like the boat tour, like if we're over capacity, you can still come in the room, but you just won't be able to eat lunch, because we only ordered a certain number of lunches. So, are we having dinner tonight? Yes, we are. So we were able to organize that we're having dinner tonight. I understand it's going to be in the classroom, and they're going to deliver it around 6:45 or 7. So just to let you guys know. Okay. And where do you hand in your guest lecture reviews? No, in class. If you're live or if you come to class, you handed it in class. And where do you hand in your 5 questions? Here in class.
So you know though on the turn it in it says guest lecture Tuesday.
No, and it was also fixed. No, it was fixed. It was fixed today. So it doesn't say that. Right. These are the 5 questions, just so you see where they're thinking. Okay. Yeah, give them that. So I think that's all I have for right now. I'm not sure who the winner was. We'll have to have the class decide who the winner was. Okay, you guys can sit down, but thank you for participating. And some people have asked me, is there a specific format that I want for the guest lecture review? There is no specific format that I'm looking for. I just want you to give me some feedback about who the guest lecturer was, what their position was, and what you learned from them, what your impression was. We're going to meet a lot of people in this class, and I think the guest lecturer feedback, it gives you a way to keep in your mind who said what, and also to remember them. So, so with that, we're going to get started with class, and we have we have a very good friend of FIU who's joining us tonight. He's joined us in both my graduate and undergraduate classes for, I think, 7 years. Like, for a long time. It's been a long time. So I'd like to introduce you to Lazaro Solis. He's a deputy property appraiser of Miami-Dade County. Miami-Dade County has about 1 million properties. He'll tell you exactly how many, right? We have about a million properties. And Lazaro is in charge of the property appraiser's office. How many people work in the property appraiser's office? 400. Okay? So Lazaro is in charge of the whole office. He graduated from the University of Miami with a degree in business administration. And in 2005, Lazaro became a Florida certified evaluator and most recently a Florida certified appraiser. Professionally, Lazaro has served the residents of Miami-Dade County for over 28 years, having worked in several areas of county government. In 2005, he was appointed to the position of Assistant Property Appraiser. As Assistant Property Appraiser, he was responsible for seeing the office's $30 million budget, ensuring the office complied with relevant Florida statutes and regulations, and coordinating Miami-Dade County's taxing authorities. In 2008, Miami-Dade voters opted to have the duties of the property appraiser held by an elected official, and in 2009, Lazaro Solis was appointed the deputy property appraiser. He held the position of property appraiser from February 2014 through November 2014. He took on the challenge of filling this vacancy and was responsible for the largest tax roll in the state of Florida. Like I said, almost or nearly 1 million properties. Lazaro is currently the deputy property appraiser for Miami-Dade County, and in his present position, he ensures the office continues to meet all statutory requirements. We're going to learn tonight that the property taxes in the state of Florida, like in all other states, are very heavily regulated by statute. So you have to do my favorite 4-letter word and read them if you want to understand the way that property taxes work. And he serves the public need, working closely with the state to maintain compliance with new legal requirements. Lazaro also spearheaded the property appraiser's website in Miami-Dade County. How many people have taken a look at that site? That site's been recognized nationally. It was the winner of the Center for Digital Government 2015 Achievement Award, and it's been recognized nationally because the property appraiser's office went out to the public and said, how can we make our website better? And they took those opinions and they incorporated it into the website, and you can find out all kinds of data there, which we're going to talk about tonight. And I'd also like Lazaro to tell us a fun fact. A fun fact.
Any questions in particular that maybe I can answer, or do you want me to just... No questions? All right.
Your bio's so serious, they also have to have a fun fact. Because we're going to spend a lot of hours together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. We review approximately between 400 and 600 cases of fraud in a given month. On average, we lien approximately between $1.5 and $3 million of liens a month.
And we'll talk later. You guys say wow when he says fraud, but when we talk about where they find the fraud, I bet some of you guys will know people who do that kind of fraud. It's something that people think is okay to do, and that's why they find so much of it. We'll talk about why sometimes I like to call it Fraudida instead of Florida, right? So with that, I'd also like to introduce Claudia. And Claudia is joining us tonight also from the Property Appraiser's Office. Claudia Miro has over 20 years of experience in governmental and external affairs at the state, legislative, and municipal levels of government. As a Miami native, Claudia was exposed to and became intimately familiar with South Florida's multicultural community. Her understanding and appreciation of cultures, coupled with her love of community and passion for people, has led to a life of public service. She began working on political campaigns in 1995, so she must have a lot to say to us tonight about politics. She served as a senior legislative aide in the Florida House of Representatives for 6 years, and she was instrumental in passing and defeating many pieces of legislation in Tallahassee. She later served as on-camera bilingual spokesperson for the South Florida Water Management District, working in communications at the Miami-Dade Emergency Operations Center. In 2006, she joined the City of Miami as Chief of Staff to a City Commissioner and then Assistant to a Chief Operations of the City Manager's Office. In 2012, she was the Deputy Director of Coalitions for Romney for President campaign in South Florida. After working for the Romney for President campaign, Claudia took a position handling external affairs for the Florida Attorney General's office in Miami. And then she joined the City of Sweetwater as part of the city's leadership team and as a spokesperson for the mayor and police department. She successfully began her professional translation business in 2014, specializing in the translation of political and public relation texts in English and Spanish, and serves clients in Tallahassee and DC. So she's with the Property Appraiser's Office now, and we welcome you to class too. So we need you to share a fun fact.
A fun fact of the Property Appraiser's Office is that although we call him the Property Appraiser, the word cadastre is also refers to Property Appraiser, and it's the same word in English, in Spanish, in Portuguese, and French. Cadastre. So, fun fact.
Thank you. So tonight what we're going to talk about are property taxes, and there's a different, property taxes are a tax that, who levies? Does the federal government levy the property taxes? The state. And then it's delegated, we'll learn how it's delegated in the state of Florida throughout the 67 counties. And we're also going to learn, we're using, there's some people that are joining us in the classroom or online who own property other places in the world. They either, there's a student who's Canadian and she may own property in Canada. There's some other students that are from some other states. There's a student who lives in Key West and is a commercial broker down there. So what we're talking about is the way that the property tax system works in the state of Florida. But each state has a different property tax system and calendar. So if you own property in a different state or will own property in a different state, I encourage you to look at the way the property tax works there. And this is just a case study of the way property taxes work here in the state of Florida. Like I said, I'm also licensed in the state of Maryland, and our property tax system is entirely different than the property tax system here in the state of Florida. Different dates that things are due, different times that you have to make payments. So it's really important to know those things. And then I have a question for the class. Did anybody get a notice about their property taxes this month? Pedro, what'd you get?
Memorandum.
Well, what is it?
Well, it states how much in property taxes I have to pay. And
Who is it from?
Miami-Dade County,
Who?
Miami-Dade County Appraiser's Office.
Is it from the appraiser's office?
Yeah, tax collector.
Is he the tax collector? No, he's not. Some people think he's a tax collector, but in Miami-Dade County, we have the tax collector office, which is another big powerhouse office with about 400 people, and we have the property appraiser office. And we're going to learn the difference. And is that all that your notice said? How many people paid theirs already? I paid mine. I just put my checks in the mail. I did. Yeah. So, okay. With that, we'll get started. Lazaro probably doesn't know, something happened with funding, federal funding for graduate programs or something like that, that didn't allow them to give us dinner anymore. Yeah. But because you were coming, I was able to convince them to have an event. So we're having an event during our break, which is free pizza. So we're getting pizza in to have an event.
Thank you very much for having us. There's a lot of material that we need to cover. You want us to distribute that?
Yeah.
Okay. The calendar might help. Okay. All right. I'm assuming they all have this.
Okay, I sent everybody out, the handout to the property appraiser's office and asked you to bring it to class with you, so I hope you did. And we also have more papers that we're giving out, but first we're looking at this, and I also have it on the computer.
Yeah. If you turn to page 1, you have the roll calendar. One of the things that
Have the roll calendar.
okay. The property appraiser is one of 5 constitutional officers in the state of Florida. What that basically means is that the authority vested in the property appraiser comes directly from the Constitution. Each state has its own constitution. The idea behind it is that all 67 counties are governed in the same way. So the Constitution lays out the blueprint on how the property appraiser is to assess properties within their respective county. Does anybody know who the other 4 constitutional officers are? I think you already touched on one of them. The tax collector. So it's property appraiser, tax collector, the sheriff, election supervisor. Anybody know the 5th one? Clerk of courts. So those are the 5 constitutional officers that are defined in the state constitution. Within that, each one has a respective authority. State law, which is basically Florida statutes, then further define what the Constitution sets out as a blueprint. Okay? Within state law is where we get into the roll calendar. It talks about what the property appraiser does, when, and how. So, the most important date in this document is January 1st. January 1st determines everything that the office does. So, the condition of the property, the ownership, the legal structure, the sales, the market conditions, all hinge on that January 1st. So, let's start with today. We're in the middle of November. What just happened? Locally. You received your tax bills.
In the world of property tax.
Within the world of property taxes.
What's on the ballot?
What month are we in, the calendar? No, but wait, if you number the months out, what month? 11. So we're in the 11th month. And you got your property tax bill for what period of time? No, 2016. What? Who says 2015? What? Who says 2016? Who says 2017? No?
Okay.
Okay.
It's a little confusing, and I'll tell you why. Our assessment is as of January 1st, which means everything that happened prior to January 1st, 2016. When we assess property, as the property appraiser, we're doing it in arrears.
And when they say assess, I mean when they determine the value of the property, they're doing the arrears. So you got to have a New Year's party, the first month of the year, in your property, 2016, not paying any tax. A Valentine's Day party, second month of the year, February, not paying any tax. March Madness, third month of the year, not paying any taxes. Living there, not paying any taxes. April Fool's Day, fourth month of the year, living there, no taxes.
What do you got from there?
May,
Cinco de Mayo.
Right?
Mother's Day.
Mother's Day. Not paying any taxes. June is my birthday, your professor's birthday. Not paying any taxes.
And you give her a big party.
Yeah. July 4th, you're living there 7th month of the year, no taxes. August, school starts, not paying any taxes.
So I think you guys get the picture.
So, but let's say you rented a place. If you rented somewhere, when would you need to pay your rent? The first of the month. In Florida, and it's not this way in Maryland, actually in Maryland, the taxes are due in the beginning of the year, and they're due in full. They're not due in arrears. They're due in advance. So in Florida, you don't have to pay your taxes until, you don't even get your tax notice until the whole year is almost gone, right? So it's kind of like a loan, right? They say it's like a very low cost loan because you're using it all the way. If it's an income producing property, you get to produce the income and then pay it. You don't have to pay it first and then produce the income. So that's what it means that taxes are paid in arrears.
So
Right.
if you look at the calendar, right now where we are today, it's sort of the tail end. Okay? Now, tax bills go out. Let's say you get it November 1st. You now have 4 months to pay. All right? So November, you get a 4% discount. December 3%, 2%, 1%, etc. If you get to April 1st, you are now delinquent. Okay, so this is like me telling you the story and I just told you the end. Now let's start from the beginning. On January 1st, what does our office do? We look at the condition of the property of everything that happened between January 2nd of 2016 to December 31st of 2016. Because on January 1st, 2017, I'm supposed to take all that information and start compiling it and give you a value for the 2017 tax roll. Okay? Between January 2nd and July 1st, our office is busy looking at over 940 or 50,000 real properties and over 120,000 personal property. Okay?
How do you look at it?
We do statistical analysis on a lot of raw information. So imagine a big computer that has detailed information on every property in the county. We look at the sales, we look at the income, and we look at the expense. The question you should be asking yourself is, how do we value the property? We follow the same standards and practices and guidelines as regular appraisers do that are not mass appraisal. There's a distinction. You go to buy a house, the bank tells you go get an appraisal done, you hire an appraiser, he'll spend 3 or 4 weeks looking at the property, measuring, doing a report, and says this is what the property is worth. We follow the exact same practice, but looking at 1 million properties in a 6-month period. So the type of tools, the measures, and the analysis that we do is a much more expedited. Think of it as, if any of you that took statistics, that's pretty much it. We do a lot of statistical analysis, and then at the end we do individual reviews when property owners come forward.
Do you visit the property?
We do aerials, we do physical inspections, we measure it when it's under construction. We first do the data gathering, and then we go into the statistical analysis, yes.
So they actually fly a plane. They fly a plane over the county. I guess it's in the end of December, right? Or the beginning of January?
We start flying the middle of December and we finish by the end of January.
And it's a special plane that it can, have you ever, if you've looked on the website, you see the aerial pictures of all the homes. It's taken from the plane, and they can find out if you've done an addition, and you can tell them. They say they can see if you're swimming in a swimming pool.
Well, we also do drive-bys and we take pictures of the front of the house.
No. What? Drones.
No, we're not using drones because it's too much territory to cover in a drone. So we literally have a plane that flies at low levels, and as it's going through, it's taking panoramic pictures of the entire area. So we'll be looking at an entire square mile with one shot. Yes?
I've always noticed on the appraiser's website, usually understating a property, that an appraiser
Yes.
Is that due to the input, I mean, you're using the same inputs.
Um,
What is that
We
difference?
can talk about that. What we're gonna do right now, I think, unless you wanna address it, is get through the calendar, and then we'll talk about the way the calculations
Yeah.
are backed out. If you-
yeah, there's a lot of factors that go into it.
What we wanna first do is ground you in what happens between January 1 and like November, because it happens every single year. So if you're a person in Florida and you know that cycle, whether you're a broker or an owner or a property manager, in my undergrad class, there's a guy and his whole job is to pay property tax for their clients. So you can make a whole, Andrew was in my class and he started working for a property tax appeal company, and now he works for another one that's a software developer. So you can make a whole career of it, but it starts by understanding the calendar. And once we get through the calendar, what happens on certain dates, then we'll get to the specific questions. But write your question down so we make sure to get to it, you don't forget it.
Okay, so we come up with a value. There are three approaches to value. You have comparable sales or market, which is basically where you analyze how the sales are doing. You have what we call costs, the actual cost of construction. And you have the income and expense approach, which is used for income producing properties. Those are the building blocks for the assessment process. Now, once a property is valued, what are the benefits you get? Those are typically called exemptions. There are two forms of benefits. One is an exemption, the other one is what we call classified value. Bless you. The exemption is basically look at fair market value and subtract the number that corresponds to whatever the law provides as a discount. So if you think of it as a discount, that's a good way of looking at it. A classified value is a value in use. We are required, and by the way, I would strongly suggest that you read section 193.011 Florida statutes. That has the 8 criteria that the property appraiser must follow.
And I have it. Do you want to take?
I think it's in the handout as well.
In the handout, and I think it's important because what you see, and we'll talk about the reasoning why.
It's the last page.
The property appraiser can't just come in and say, I tax you this way. Maybe in another country, they can say you have to pay this much to the government and not give you an explanation. But here in the U.S., they can't ask you to pay property taxes on your property without giving you explanation and without having their assessment or how they derive the value, just valuation, determined by criteria, and those criteria are determined by the statute. And why do you think, based on our previous discussions, that all of this is determined by statute and that the property appraiser is so regulated, that the property tax process is so regulated? Why do you think?
Everything needs to be done in the due process of the law.
Due process, exactly. I told you guys those are very special 2 words. This is all about due process. So we're going to learn about all the notices that we get and the timeline and continue through that. But take a look at 193.011. It's really important to understand the criteria that the property appraiser must take into consideration when they're valuing your property.
Okay, so once we determine an assessment as of January 1st, now you get, as a property owner, you have certain benefits coming to you. The most popular and common one is the homestead exemption. There, basically by virtue of just living on the property and it being your permanent residence, you get $50,000 taken off of your county taxable and $25,000 worth of value taken off of your school board taxable. Again, it becomes somewhat of a convoluted formula, primarily because when the state legislature is going through and saying, we want to give these benefits out, they say, we don't want to hurt the school board, or we want to benefit this group more than the others.
Let's talk a little bit. We're getting into the calendar. We're saying that, there's that joke with death and taxes that happens to everybody. And we're not talking about IRS taxes. Sometimes people get confused. We're talking about property taxes. But why do people have to pay property taxes, Advisor? What's the purpose?
Well, property taxes fund local government. So you have cities, school boards, the county, special districts, regional authorities, the South Florida Water Management District. Those folks maintain the Everglades, the navigation waters that come through the state, the canals that drain for floodplains, etc. All those are funded through local property taxes.
What if you don't have kids, or what if your kids go to private school? Could you just get exempt yourself from paying the school board part?
No.
So the idea is we like to have paved streets, you know, we like to have water that runs. You want to have people that go to school, public school, then you have to pay into the taxes, right? What do you think John Locke would say about that? What would he say? He would be proud. Why?
Because we're working on the land and on the community and bettering it for all of us. It's like we're paying for our own use.
Social contract.
Right, it's part of, and it's just, did you read my John Locke? Did you know
No.
that it says that? It's part of the social contract. It's part of the idea when the men came together and decided that they would be more organized and safer than living all in a state of nature. They did a social contract. They put the value on money, and they decided rules and regulations that make everybody live a better life. So although nobody likes to pay taxes, right? Somebody tonight emailed me. I told them you were coming, and they emailed me. I'm gonna come and say my offense taxes are too high. But even if you, but that person owns a lot of property. But even if you own a lot of property, really, the idea is that socially, you want these things for our community, right? Right.
So, for instance, one of the questions that I get asked all the time, it's like, well, it's unfair, I can barely make ends meet, why am I paying for property tax, etc. When the system was first developed, the concept was that only rich landowners own property. Common, middle class, working class did not own real estate property. So the idea behind it was, okay, we're going to tax the rich because they're the landowners, and for the folks that don't own property, they don't have to pay property taxes. That was the general concept. Fast forward a few hundred years, now owning property is like owning a car. It's almost a given. The majority of the population owns some form of property. Therefore, it's become more of a burden for the working class, etc. So that's how these benefits get created. So if you own a home, then you get a benefit by getting a homestead exemption. If you're disabled, if you're a low-income senior, they give you another benefit.
We have some veterans in the class. One of them isn't here with us tonight, but he told me how important the disability for the veteran is. You know, who else are my veterans in the class? Yeah, and do you guys own property? And you take advantage, you have to apply for the exemption. His office wouldn't know you were a veteran just because you did the purchase and sale, right?
Right.
And why would we give a benefit, an exemption? It's actually like, you get to pay a reduced rate of property taxes or a discounted rate to veterans or to homeowners or to senior citizens. Why do you think that's in the law? Why?
Because if not, it would cause hardship on us. And they would probably default with.
But why do you think, I mean, that means if they pay less, everybody else has to pick up their share, right? Or, I think it's religious institutions don't pay tax, right? So why does this society support that?
We're like doing the right thing, you know?
Oh, here, let me ask this question.
Right.
How does it come to be? Who decides who gets the benefit and who doesn't? That's kind of same. Anybody voted yesterday? Did you see the constitutional amendments? Okay.
So who makes the decision?
We do.
Voters.
Right.
Voters do, and that's the reason why it's very important to vote. I think, and we're going to talk a little bit later about those amendments, but they passed with a very high passage rates, like 77 and 82.
With the exception of one.
With the exception of one.
The solar panel one did not.
I was only talking about the two properties, not
Yes.
the solar panel one. Yeah. But the one that gives a benefit or discount to seniors, and the one that gives a discount or a benefit to firefighters or law enforcement who are permanently disabled, it seems like everybody in the state of Florida, they couldn't agree on who would be president, right? There was differences in the state of Florida on that, but there was a strong majority in the state of Florida that felt that our values here are that seniors should get a discount, and our values here are that people who are first responders, who are firefighters or law enforcement, should also get that discount. So who makes the decision? Not those people all the way up who aren't reachable in government. You do. You're the voters.
Right.
Yeah.
For those of you that may be interested, we passed out the legislative analysis. This is actually from the staff in Tallahassee. So once the bills passed, then the staff that works for the state of representatives and the senators are tasked with coming up with a comprehensive analysis. This basically talks about what the intent of the law is, its pros, cons, any pitfalls, fiscal impacts, etc. So we did not write this. This is straight from Tallahassee, but we thought it might be something you might be interested in. Now, what our office did do is on Amendment 5, which is the long-term senior benefit, we tried to do sort of a simplified explanation of what it's trying to do. And this one is a little bit hard to understand what the intent was because the exemption already existed. When this amendment initially passed, it basically stated that in order for a low-income senior to get an additional benefit on their property taxes, they had to live on their home for 25 years, and the assessed value that the property appraiser puts on the property had to be less than $250,000. There was an unintended consequence of that amendment and something that was not foreseen at the time. And that is, let's say you have 100 seniors that qualify. Their homes range from $150,000 to $200,000. As the market turns around and starts increasing, now they're living on fixed income, Social Security, etc. They're only used to paying maybe $500 in property taxes. What do you think happens when their property assessment goes above $250,000? They lost the exemption. So all of a sudden they went from paying $500 in property taxes to paying $3,000 in property taxes, which they couldn't afford. So it created a burden on that group that the initial intent of the legislature was not to have that trigger kick in long term. So we had over, I would say, 1,500 property owners that actually lost the exemption. There was a public outcry. Mr. Garcia pushed the legislature to pass this amendment. It was well received. It passed through both houses unanimous, both chambers, but it was a constitutional amendment. So it could not be enacted by the legislature. It had to go back to the voters. But this is one of those amendments that everybody was asking us. I don't understand. I thought the benefit already exists, so what are you doing? Well, what we tried to implement was basically that $250,000 worth of value was set at the time that you applied. So if you bought a home for $150,000, by the time you applied it's at $200,000, you get the benefit. As time goes on, maybe that value of that property goes up to $350,000. Well, you continue with the benefit going forward because the qualification for it is at the time of the application. The way the original constitutional amendment was passed is you have to look at it every year. At the moment that the assessment goes above $250,000, the senior would lose the benefit, creating a financial burden for those property owners. We went back and we rectified that.
And it's how it's worded, right? Because we're talking about law, and I don't think that the intent was that the seniors probably are on a fixed income or not working at all. So they want to give them a break on the property taxes, and those are lower value properties. So the intent wasn't if, let's say the seniors are living there and we go through one of our cycles, one of our real estate cycles, and all of a sudden the values increase. Is the senior making any more money? No. And they're going to have to pay a lot more in property taxes and lose the exemption. So it was the thing about the way they worded it. It had an unintentional consequence. So when I'm asking you guys to read and think about each word, it's because, statewide it had a whole big consequence, and they had to go back to all the voters in the state and get it fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, any piece of legislation that goes through Tallahassee, it gets scrutinized 100 different ways. Because what may make sense to Miami-Dade County may not make sense to Polk County
Well, we saw that.
or Orange County.
Right? We saw what made sense to Miami-Dade County didn't make sense
Correct.
to the rest of Florida.
So, I mean, it's a big testament, the fact that it passed both the House and the Senate unanimously. Rarely do you get consensus, not only between the two chambers, but also across party lines. So all the Democrats and all the Republicans voted in favor of it.
Who formulated those questions? Because the amendment 1 for the solar panel was so confused because it's supposed to, if you vote for the yes, was the no, if you vote for the no, was the yes. And
That is
then-
determined by the way the bill is initially created. So for example, in my capacity, I can propose legislation to a state rep and a senator, and if I'm being devious, I can present it in such a way that they themselves may not know that although it may be sold as a benefit, if you read the fine print, I mean, one thing you need to understand, our elected officials are not experts in every aspect of the law.
And they might not even know real estate, right? They might just been very popular in their community, and that's how they get elected. It's not by, they don't, it's not always by what they know. Right.
Correct. So that's why they rely on people like myself and other professionals to advise them, hey, this is good, this is bad, of course, but how do you keep the politics out of it? So if you have, let's just say, and I can't speak to it technically because I'm not in that industry, but let's just say if you believe half of what you hear, that the utilities, FP&L, the gas companies, etc., this was their way of introducing a bill that ratified in the Constitution a framework on how this was going to go forward. They sold it as, hey, this is the benefit for everybody because you're going to get solar power. What they failed to say is that you already have that right as an individual property owner today. You don't have to put it in the Constitution. What they didn't say was it also imposes a series of regulations that buffers them from additional cost. And again, it's not that they want to cheat homeowners out of their benefit. If you also look at their side, is, you know, we're spending billions of dollars in putting in power lines and building power plants and doing this and that, and all of a sudden you're going to narrow our markets down, then why am I going to invest that huge capital? So there's always two sides to the story. It's not that they're necessarily trying to become richer and hurt the property owners, it's they're trying to protect their investment, no different than a company would in any other circumstance. In Florida, the utilities are regulated. So again, it's a very complex process. Was this sold one way? Is it truly an amendment on solar power? Yes, but you got to read the fine print.
And I think, and for people who are watching who aren't in Florida, the idea is the same. Legislation, what we mean by legislation is when an idea becomes a law, right? It has to come from somebody. So maybe it comes from the property appraiser's office, and they're working with the state representatives, or if you had an idea and you wanted to come along on a federal level, you'd work with your representatives in Congress or the Senate, and then you have this idea, and then some people up there in the committee write it up, and then they need to negotiate, so everybody negotiates, and sometimes it comes out not the right way, and the people who have that idea need to read it again to make sure that it's still true to the idea, right? And voters who care, because these things, you know, could affect your grandparents, could affect you, need to do their research to understand, right?
Plus it gets very complex. There have been instances where we've introduced a very benign technical idea, and it gets hijacked by another legislator. So let's say you're the sponsor of my bill, but your professor here has other ideas. So she'll tell you, you either accept my amendment to your bill, or I'm going to kill it. So sometimes you start off with a very novel idea, and there's nothing wrong with it, you know, in general terms, and it gets hijacked, and by the time it passes, it's a fraction, or it's a very small percentage of what you're intended to do, and now it has additional factors or conditions, etc., added to it, they were never your original intention. And sometimes they even introduce ideas that go beyond what you wanted. So let's say you wanted to create some form of regulation, and the regulation was modest in nature. Another legislator will come in and say, okay, let's double the fee. Knowing very well that you can't say in good conscience, don't do that, because that's really the intent. You were just trying to get it by doubling the fee, you know that the opposing party is gonna, or a committee member is gonna kill it. So Tallahassee is a very interesting environment.
And all state capitals are, and so is Washington DC, you know, right. But what we're gonna do is get back to our county.
Okay, so all these exemptions and benefits, the deadline is March 1st. So you have until March 1st.
So what does that mean? So it means if you, let's say that you buy your place, right? You buy it in February. No, you buy it December 15th. So you were the homeowner on January 1. And then you want to get the homestead exemption, right? So does the property appraiser know that that's your primary residence? No, how would he know? He has a million properties. He doesn't know. Just like he didn't know that Taiwan's a veteran, right? How does he know? So you have to do something, right? And what if you say, well, I didn't know that I had to do it. Nobody told me. Your broker should tell you, or your lawyer should tell you, but it's not their legal duty to tell you. It's not within the scope of their legal duty, but they should tell you because you could save a lot of money. So you have until March 1st to file your paperwork for those exemptions. Now, if there's an extenuating circumstance, the property appraiser will work with you if you can prove what it is, but they'll work with you so that you can still get it.
All right, so once upon a time, it was a hard deadline. If you did not file by March 1st, you didn't get it. Then, property appraisers got together with the legislature and said, look, we need to soften this up a little bit. Sometimes, people have good reason. So they allowed for extenuating circumstance. To file. The next deadline is April 1st. On April 1st, two things happen. One, it's a deadline to file your tangible personal property tax return. Personal property, if this was a business, the tables, the chairs, the computers, the projector, the overhead, all that is considered tangible personal property. We assess it, and a tax is levied on it. State law requires that you file a tax return, very similar to what you file with your federal income tax return, itemizing your assets. When we look at it, we evaluate it, and we set a value on it. The deadline for that is April 1st. Additionally, we also have the office, our office, the tax collector, etc. The Department of Revenue, the Florida Department of Revenue has oversight authority. So what is crucial in our assessments? The sales information. So the state requires it on April 1st. By April 1st, we submit from our tax roll all the sales that we plan on considering for the July 1st assessment date. So we are then, we look at all the sales that were accumulated from the previous year. One of the things that we have to do as property appraiser when we look at those sales is qualify them as being good sales or disqualifying them as being bad sales. Again, following state guidelines. So what happens is this. Let's say we're looking at your neighborhood and there are 100 homes and there were 10 sales. Some sales are going to be high, some sales are going to be low. If I'm running for office as property appraiser and you guys are all my friends and I want you to re-elect me, the easiest thing for me to do is to say, let me keep the values low. So I can take the sales that are high, disqualify them, and only look at the low sales, and then come back and say, look, based on the sales, this is the value for this neighborhood. Or if I don't like you guys, because you've been giving me a hard time while I've been talking, I say, you know what, let me disqualify the low sales, only look at the high sales, and you're going to pay more property taxes. So what the state does is says, okay, Mr. Property Appraiser, I don't want you playing that game. Let me have all your sales. I'm going to look at them and make sure that you're doing your job properly. Okay? So we send the sales up on April 1st.
So they have to have all their homework done, right? Before April 1st. Send it up to the state for the state's review. They want to make sure that the counties aren't doing things differently, that everybody's applying the law in the same way, right? And it's the law of, there's 67 different property appraisers, right?
Correct.
So the state wants to make sure that each of the 67 are not playing favorites, they're not saying we like this part of the city better than that part. They're applying that law, like we said, we've seen that there's law and the Supreme Court applies it all different ways, elastic, narrow, whatever. In this case, do you think that this law, the property that governs the property appraiser's valuation, is it elastic? What is it?
Pretty narrow.
It's pretty narrow because it's subject to all this oversight. Why do you think it's subject to so much oversight?
There's 67 other offices and everything has to be consistent. Right.
Because it can affect a ton of people, it's a lot of money.
What else? My 2 words, Rob.
Due process.
Due process, right? They're really putting these guys through a lot of hoops to go through, right? They're busy for the whole year. These statutes are keeping 400 people busy for the whole year with all their requirements.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, by June 1st, our office is required to do an estimate of the tax roll. It doesn't go out to the individual property owners. At the end of the day, what is the benefit of the tax roll? It's for us to say, this is the value of all the properties, and then the cities, the school board, the county, etc., use those numbers to come up with a budget. So on June 1st, the property appraiser is required to give the taxing authorities, the cities, the school boards, the county, etc., an estimate of what their tax roll is going to look like, which is basically a culmination of all the assessments of all the individual properties. It's not the final roll, it's not the certified roll, it's just an estimate. But what that does is it triggers the cities and the other taxing authorities to start their budget process. And a little bit down the road, you'll understand why it needs to start at that point. So on June 1st, we do an estimate of taxable value, goes to the taxing authorities. By July 1st, which is only a month later, we have to certify the official tax roll. It's called the preliminary tax roll, the initial certification, goes by various names.
So you're telling them the value of all the properties, your value of all the properties minus the exemptions? Or
Correct. It's the taxable value.
the taxable value of every piece of property.
This is a culmination of a year-long's work. Leading up to January 1st, we're accumulating and gathering data. After January 1st, we start compiling and doing the analysis. By July 1st, we have to bless it. We have to tell everybody, this is our official number. So the city of Miami will have X billions of dollars that they can levy a millage rate, which is a tax rate, to collect revenue. School board, this is what your tax roll looks like. Now, one of the questions I saw was, how do we come up with the value in terms of, and why is it always lower, which I think goes back to your question as well. If you read 193.011, we are subject to a series of considerations or limitations that we have to look at. So, for example, one of the things that it states is that we must consider or subtract out from our assessment what is called cost of sale. So for any one of you that has...
It's sub 8. If you're reading 193.11, you get subsection number 8.
And it's called criteria 8. Those are the 8 criterias that property appraisers must follow. So when you buy or sell real estate, there's always a cost associated with it. You have inspection fees, you have an appraisal, you have brokerage fees, etc. The state says, the Department of Revenue says, okay, Mr. Property Appraiser, you're looking at 1 million properties. We know that you can't narrow it down 100%, and you must take into consideration all these factors. What number are you using as your cost of sale? So, the state says that anywhere from 0 to 15% is at our discretion. Anything above 15%, the property appraiser has to justify to the state.
So they can take, let's say somebody bought a property for $1 million, right? That's what the purchase price was. And the property appraiser is saying up to 15% of that can be deducted from the assessed value. So what would that be if you took 15% off? What?
150,000.
So what would the value be? 850. So you might see that somebody bought a property for 100,000 per million, and then it's taxed at 850. And you'd say, why? That's not fair because it doesn't reflect the market price. And it doesn't, but it is fair because it's according to the criteria to derive just value. Yep.
So property owners have to report that, or how does
Yes and no.
work?
Since we're dealing with so many properties, we do studies and we come up with, for lack of a better term, a safe number. I think a property owner would have a difficult time arguing with us saying that we should factor in more than 15%. Because in reality, the higher the value or the higher the amount of the sale, usually less the amount of the commission, which is a percentage. So on a $100,000 home, yeah, maybe 15% is the correct number. On $1 million sale, I've never seen a $1 million sale where you have 15% cost of sale. It's just impossible because the appraisal is going to cost you $500, whether it's $1 million or not. Your commissions taper off the higher the sale price. So we use 15% as our statistical measure just to do our analysis. So the state requires that we notify them what that factor is. Now, to make it even a little bit more confusing, the state says, when you submit your roll to us on July 1st, we're going to dissect it. We're going to stratify it. We're going to look at it for equity, both vertical and horizontal. What does that mean? Vertical is the property appraiser using the same level of assessment for a $100,000 home that they would for a $1 million home? Horizontal is, are we using the same level of assessment on the beach than we would on a property in Homestead or Kendall? So you have based on value, based on location, based on property type. So, in other words, what the state wants to make sure is that all 67 property appraisers aren't injecting their own personal bias into the process. And that's what they do when we submit the tax roll on July 1st. In order to be able to do that, they need us to tell them, what's your level of assessment? What cost of sale are you applying to the roll? Within that, they say, okay, we're going to take your tax roll, and then we're going to look at it, and we're going to say, as long as you're within 90% to 105% or 110%, you're within the range. The goal is to get it at 100%. So if the property sells for $100, we should be at $85 when you subtract the cost of sale. But when you factor in the 90% range, a 10% range to play with, because remember, you're dealing with a lot of properties, and it's impossible for any one property to be exactly where it needs to be. They say, okay, we're going to give you another 10% wiggle room. So when you factor in the 15% cost of sale plus the range of value, you're looking at $1 million property. If we have it assessed at $760,000, we're in the ballpark. So between $760 and $850, we're in the ballpark. If we go below that, then the state comes back and says, okay, you got a problem. You're under assessing. If we go too much above that, same thing. You got a problem. Why are you over assessing? So it's the hardest thing for most people to understand is that we do a range of value. It's not an absolute. And that's where it gets difficult. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So July 1st, we send the tax roll out to the cities and the school board, etc. And we also send it to the state for approval.
Does anybody here work in a city? Or anybody know anybody that does? Because when they send it out to the city July 1st, those city employees in the finance department, they are not going on vacation. It's not time for summer vacation. It's their crunch time to say, we have this pot of money in our city. We need to fund our police department, our fire department. You know, we need to our public works or whatever we need to do. And we need to work with this pot of money and figure out how we're going to tax, what our tax rate is going to be for our property owners. And that's what the budget office is doing, right? And they're proposing it to their city commissions. And as a city commissioner, what do you care about?
Re-election.
Re-election. You want to get re-elected, right?
Yeah.
So if the market's good, you're like, that's okay, we don't have to raise the tax rate. And nobody's going to be mad at me because I didn't raise the tax rate, right? But if the market's bad, you might need to raise people's tax rates. If there's not a lot of money coming in, and then maybe you won't get re-elected.
Yeah, basically it boils down to service. It's funny, if you ever go to budget hearings at the city level, and then you go to the same budget hearing at the county level, it's the same person. They'll show up at the city saying, I need a park, I need this, I need that, I don't care, get the money, do it. They show up in county hall and they say, you guys are crazy, you're overtaxing me, you're doing this and that, cut your services. Because what most people care about is their local service. What affects me immediately? I don't care what you're doing for all those social programs, for the homeless, for the Children's Trust, for all these things that don't personally affect me. But my sidewalk, my park, my garbage collection, fine, I'll pay for that. And that's usually where you get, it's almost ironic, because I've seen the property owners at City Hall saying, tax me more, give me more service, and then I see the same individual show up at County Hall and say, you guys are out of your mind, you're taxing me out of my home. But because the bigger the government, the more disconnected they are from the individual. So remember, the county has 2.7 million residents. They're servicing 2.7 million residents. When you go to Miami Springs, you might have a couple of thousand. Even in the city of Miami, it's a relatively small number. So the level of service that local government provides, it's very different. The other one, the school board. The school board never seems to have enough money. Why? Because children are the sacred cows. Nobody cares how much it costs. I want you to give my child everything that they can possibly get their hands on. I want new books, I want new computers, I want a bigger school, and I'm willing to pay for it. So that's where you see, in terms of the budgeting and the priorities, a big variation in terms of what the general population is asking for and what they expect from their government. So we do the certifications to the city, we tell them what the role is going to be. And based on that, they set their budgets. Between July 1st and August 4th, they have to come up with what is called a proposed millage rate. The millage rate is basically the tax rate. So for every $1,000 of value that is assessed on your property, you're going to pay $1 of tax. Okay? So pretty much on average across the board, it comes out to roughly 2% with all the taxing authorities combined. School board, city, etc.
2% of the assessed value
2% of the assessed value, correct.
is what your tax bill will be around, your tax obligation to pay.
We actually use more or less that 2% when people ask, you know,
Yeah.
how much you have to pay for that property, and say, calculate 2% if you qualify for the extensions.
In some cities it's higher, in some other areas it's a little lower.
Pretty-
So in the more affluent areas where the property values are much higher, the millage rate is lower because they're providing the same level of service in Coral Gables than they would in Opa-locka. Except in Opa-locka, a house, a $200,000 house is considered a good home. In Coral Gables, you can't buy a piece of land for $200,000, much less have a house on it. So it's all relative. So the higher the value, the lower the millage rate.
And I think, I might get the number wrong, but when I had Alex Robertson from the DDA on the vote for with me, she said that the increase in taxes in the Brickell area was $1 million or more this year. It was a lot more.
In terms of revenue for her? Possible. She has a very low millage rate.
Right, and that's why the millage rate can be low, because the values are so high, right? And there's so much building here.
If you look on what is it, page 7, you can see the individual breakout of the millage rate. And the millage rate is by taxing authority. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind, the millage rate applies, or it's what we refer to as ad valorem tax. Does anybody know what ad valorem means?
Property taxes?
I'm sorry?
Property taxes?
No, it's of value. So the rate is based on the value of your home.
Oh,
Ad valorem. Non-ad valorem means it's not based on the value. What's an example of a non-ad valorem assessment? You can't. Solid waste. If you're paying $499 to have the county come by and pick up your garbage, whether your house is worth $100,000 or $1 million, it's still $499. But the ad valorem tax on $1 million home is going to be 10 times higher, correct? Because the rate is based on the value.
So again, let's say that you say that the tax, who wants to be my angry property owner? Me, Madeline, okay. So you get your tax bill, and you say the millage rate, the tax rate is too high, right? Who are you gonna complain to?
Wait, you're getting ahead.
Oh, am I?
Let's get to the truth.
Okay, sorry.
All right, so between, I'm sorry.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
In the Miami-Dade County Population and Assessment Roll, 2010 is the one that we have. Coral Gables, the population is 45,000, and Hialeah, it's 226,000. But the percent of tax roll in Coral Gables is 6.3%, whereas Hialeah is 3.9. Is that because the value of the properties is just much higher?
Are you looking at one of the charts that I gave you guys, or something
no,
else?
This is just one of the readings, and it's a
Oh, okay.
pertaining to this.
It might have been from, they might have some of my readings in there from 2010, that's why, it might be in the Blackboard. But what are you looking at exactly?
Essentially, the population in Coral Gables is exponentially lower than Hialeah, but Coral Gables' percent of tax roll is double what it is in Hialeah.
Well, I have to assume, you have to look at the individual factors. I'm assuming you're looking at some kind of census data.
Yeah.
So population does not translate to property ownership.
Yeah.
Okay, number one. Number two, what's the golden rule in real estate? Location, location, location. Okay? If you were buying a home in Coral Gables or buying a home in Hialeah, would you pay $1 million for a home in Hialeah?
No.
But you would in Coral Gables.
That's right.
Okay, so what does that tell you about the market? The values in Coral Gables are a little higher, probably a lot higher.
A lot higher, yeah.
Okay, if you turn to page 6. This is what we certified to the cities on July 1st. There's a breakdown by city. Just using your example, the tax roll for Coral Gables on July 1st, 2016 was $14.3 billion taxable value. Hialeah was 8.5. So it's not a huge difference, but it's a significant difference. So population doesn't always translate one for one on property value or number of properties. If you look at, I don't think I have it here because I only brought the cumulative totals. I have a separate chart, and if you can find it online, that gives you a breakdown by city of their class of properties. And it'll tell you how many single-family homes, how many commercial properties, etc. each one has.
Exactly.
And it shows you their relative value. So, I mean, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you can go in there and do analysis and say, on average, a single-family home in Hialeah, well, that I do have. That is on page On page 4 and page 5, you have the average and median residential value and average and median homesteaded value. The difference is that a homesteaded property has a cap in terms of what the assessment is, where if it doesn't have homestead, it's showing you the raw market data. Okay, so looking at an average residential property in Coral Gables, there are approximately 16,307. The average market value in Coral Gables is $881,000. In Hialeah, it's $149,918. Slight difference.
Have you calculated those taxes for the unincorporated zones? I mean, they don't belong to no cities.
I'm sorry?
Unincorporated Miami-Dade County.
It's, our assessments are based on market areas. We don't look at city boundaries.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, anybody familiar with the western part of Coral Gables off of 57th Avenue?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, so between Bird Road and Coral Way, right up 57th Avenue, you have east of 57th Avenue, it's Coral Gables. Okay? Normal lots, normal house. Just west of 57th Avenue, it's not Coral Gables. Yeah. Big difference in price. So when we're doing our analysis, we're looking at the actual market area. So we'll look at a square mile, we'll look at a neighborhood, a subdivision, and say, what are they selling for? And then based on that, that's the value that we apply. Well, again, the city is secondary. Remember, we are market driven. So I gotta see what the sales are. If all of a sudden Coral Gables starts going down in value, it goes down in value. But we're not doing it because it's Coral Gables, we're doing it because that's what the market is indicating. So we look at the market factors, the sales, the condition of the properties, any economic factors that are affecting it, government restrictions. So if the city gets too ambitious and starts putting all these restrictions, their property values are gonna go down. Zoning. Zoning tells us what the property value can be put, what use it could be put to. There's something that we haven't really touched on, which is our assessment is based on what is called the highest and best use.
And that was part of the criteria. That's part of the 193.00
011.
criteria. 011, right?
Yeah. So, for example, picture a pristine lot in the middle of downtown Miami.
Oh, they can, because we saw $125 million acre.
That was one, yeah.
That's vacant, right, that was a
Yeah.
listing lot.
So, let's say that lot had a surface parking area. Okay, like there's tons of those in downtown. It's a commercial property. Commercial properties we value on income. If we were to value that property purely on income, it would have a much lower assessment.
Or the one that we saw has nothing in it, right? Doesn't even have any income. So you guys shouldn't tax it at all,
Exactly. So, that's what the owner wants.
right?
So what happens is, now the zoning says, hey, you can put a 50-story condo, a 50-story office building on this property. So, but it doesn't exist. What does the property appraiser have to do? We have to value it as if you were an investor and you were looking to buy that lot, how much would you pay knowing what the land is going to yield in terms of a return?
And that's criteria number 2.
Then you
It
compare.
says highest and best use, right?
Correct. So you as the property owner say, Mr. Property Appraiser, you are out of your mind.
So Mr. Coachman just says, you're crazy. I have nothing here. There's a boat full of FIU students just went by. They saw it's empty. Why should I pay a penny, right?
Right. So they're saying, I just have a simple little surface parking lot, I'm growing grass, there's nothing here, it's just landscaping. But no, the truth is that when it's sold, does anybody know how much it's sold for?
How much?
125 miles.
Right, and it was an acre and a quarter. So it sold for $1 million an acre. Unheard of.
It's the highest land sale in the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was insane. Our assessment was nowhere near it. Yet it went to the Value Adjustment Board and got a further reduction.
I noticed that I don't know if this is true in other areas, but like Little Haiti and Upper East Side area, there are old properties that I assume are grandfathered into their primary land use, even though technically in Miami 21 they're zoned lower. How do you guys
I
address?
want to stay with that one first, though, because we're finishing the story. So the guys bought it for 125 million. You guys had it assessed at what?
I can't remember.
Something low.
Something ridiculous.
And then they came in, and what did they do?
They appealed it and they got another reduction.
They got it lower than the assessment for what they bought it for.
Before it was worth, we're taking them to court.
And now what are they doing with it?
They have a huge condo.
Power, right?
Yeah. Yep. But, so is it fair that they got a reduced value on it? They think it is.
Can you ask?
Is it legal that they got to reduce value? Yeah, it's legal. Yeah, it's legal that they got to reduce value. You know, sometimes we learn in the law what is legal is not always what is fair or what people consider fair or moral or right.
I mean, look at Trump. He didn't pay taxes for how many years?
Yeah.
It's legal. He didn't do anything wrong. The tax code allows for it. It's the same thing. The checks and balances, the due process are in place for a reason. If they were not, I mean, as property appraiser, we like to think that we're perfect. But if I'm looking at 1 million properties, I'll be the first one to say we're not perfect. So there's a process in place where the property owners can appeal their assessment. Now the question is it abusive or not? And really, you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis. There are many times we go into these hearings and we admit, hey, we made a mistake. We overassessed the property. On others, we defend vigorously because they're just, trying to save some money. But in fact, our assessment is fair. On this one, we believe that the assessment was actually below after seeing the sale, yet they still got a reduction at the hearing.
Are you going to talk about VAT yet, or wait till we get to our date?
Let's get to term. All right, so between July 1st and August 4th, the cities and the other taxing authorities prepare their budgets and submit to the property appraiser what their proposed millage rate is. The reason that is so important, and the deadline for that is August 4th. The reason that's so important is because then the property appraiser is tasked with the duty of notifying each and every property owner of what their proposed taxes will be. So I need to know what the cities are thinking of doing in terms of their tax rate so that I can let all of you know, hey, this is what those crazy people are planning on taxing you for. Remember, we're not the tax collector, we don't impose the tax. As property appraiser, our job is solely to say this is what it's worth. So, between August 4th and August 24th, we are responsible for preparing and getting in the mail over 1 million tax notices. The notices are commonly referred to as trim. Why is it called trim?
Yeah, who knows why it's a trim notice? Anybody know what that means?
Yeah, I remember reading it.
I sure wasn't even my undergrad class. Desi and Daniel.
Truth in millage.
Good job. Good job. Yeah.
Politicians love putting little buzzwords in pieces of legislation because it resonates. It's kind of, think of it as like a political marketing. For instance, the homestead exemption, when it was first introduced, it was called Save Our Homes. Why was it called Save Our Homes? It's catchy. People are going to vote for it. Hey, yeah, save my house. The Amendment 1. Solar. It sells. Okay? So, by August 24th, each of the 67 property appraisers is required to put in the mail the tax notice, which is what's up on the screen.
So who sends out the tax notice? Who mails it out?
The county tax collector.
No, the property appraiser. I just said it. 67 property appraisers.
They have to send out 1 million pieces of mail.
Okay, now I know you guys are asleep. It's on page 8. All right. What is so important about this?
Or what are the important parts about this? Because there's a few important parts about this. First of all, what is this? Why are they making his office send out 1 million pieces of these?
Isn't it due process as well? You need to inform what they're gonna be charged.
Is this a bill? Do you have to pay something when you get it?
But it's not an idea.
Look at the top right.
The notice.
You're not paid, this is not a bill, yeah.
Not a bill.
Right.
It's a notice.
I wonder if we should leave them with a cliffhanger and have our little dinner and then we'll continue.
Why does this like somebody going to cheat? They're going to catch me on the side of the house.
That's alright, that's alright. We're
Alright.
gonna leave you with a cliffhanger and have a little dinner and then, we're gonna have it in the room, so thank you to Alfie and Carlos for arranging it. If you don't wanna eat pizza, you don't have to eat with us. It's just an opportunity to spend some informal time with the property appraiser. We're gonna stop the presentation while we have something to eat and then start back up.
Awesome.
So, and you guys can take, a break, check your voicemail, email, text, go to the bathroom, all those things. Yeah. Great. Thanks.